Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. I have a very, very special guest this week, Rebeka Herron. She is a writer, producer, and director, and I'm going to get emotional. She is the reason that I have the acting career that I have today, and I am not exaggerating at all. She truly is. We talk about this a lot in the industry, about how we as actors feel that, if someone would just give us a chance, we can show what we got. Rebeka and her producing partner, Trish, are those people in my life. They gave me a chance when I had barely any experience. They allowed me to get my first union credit, my first speaking role in a film. We became friends at that shooting of that film when I was like, I need these two powerful, incredible women in my life. I basically stalked them. And ever since, we have become friends, and they, I don't want to get emotional, constantly think of me and recommend me for roles that they're filming up in the Sioux and up in the North. And I've had the incredible honor and opportunity to be a part of many of Rebeka's projects. She is just the absolute freaking queen, and I love her so much. That's my story with Rebeka, but the important thing that we're going to chat about today on this episode is her story, how she got to where she is today, basically revolutionizing the Northern Ontario film industry, the Sault Ste. Marie film industry. Please enjoy, don't cry, Janet. Please enjoy the woman who has been the most influential person in my career, Rebeka Herron. Tell me your story. How did you become a producer and director?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, this industry has always kind of like been poking at me, I guess you could say, ever since I was a little kid. My first ever experience on TV was when I was 8 years old, on a very weird kids TV show called Telltale Town, which I think was like on YTV when we were young. They came to town. They needed kids during the summer. My teacher in elementary, she was like telling my mom, you have to get Rebeka on the show. She's such a good little actor, blah, 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 blah. So my mom signed me up without really my permission. And I just remember hating it. I remember hating it so much because I was like a super tomboy, and like I wanted to be outside all the time, and being on that show meant being in a trailer and waiting all hours of the day until your turn, and then going on set and, doing your thing, and then going back in the trailer and having a cookie. Like, it just was like not my jam. And then I was like, okay, this is stupid. So I left like that world behind, I thought. And I focused myself on like learning languages and learning music. And in high school, I was in honors, languages and band and, traveling with music and stuff like that. And that was my goal. Like, I wanted to be an interpreter, and I wanted to be in like the university band. And then I was 15 and I got hit by a car walking to school one day, and everything changed. And I was, had a big head trauma, and like I had to kind of learn how to walk again, and like it was just a whole thing. I lost a good part of my like teenage years just trying to like reacquaint myself with like memory and learning and all of that again. And I was, on a path to, graduate without needing a lot of courses left. And so I had some like spare blocks in my in my curriculum, and the principal refused to let me have more than one spare, which was annoying. So I had to take a class, um, and my friend suggested film and TV because it was easy, and the teacher kind of just let you do your own thing, and then you could either make videos or just F off. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. And then it ended up being that I enjoyed doing that, and I never skipped. We always were out making content and editing it. And back then our editing system was tape to tape. So we would film and then ingest our VHS tapes or mini DV tapes into a system, and then edit in this old archaic system, and then ingest out tapes and then play it, right? So it was learning kind of analog style, which was pretty cool. And then from there, I got a scholarship to go to film school in your neck of the woods, actually, in North Van. And that's kind of it. I went to film school right out of high school. I was 17, graduated when I was 19, and then been working in the industry since. And for me, producing, I like being at the very beginning and all the way to the very end. I like to see a project kind of all the way through. It's because that's when you see the different iterations of a project, right? Because the first time you see a story, it's written. Then you see the director's vision. Then you get to post and you have a whole new version of the film. So it's kind of interesting to see it as it all the way goes. And I worked a lot in reality TV, factual TV. So in those cases, post-production is everything. Whereas in sort of drama and comedy, it's not always the savior per se. Yeah. So yeah. And then directing, I did a bunch of directing when I was fresh out of film school, and then I kind of took a seat back and focused a lot on producing. And then it's only in the last year or so that I've been really looking at directing again.
When you were younger, was there ever a moment when somebody said, yeah, you're really creative, you're this good little actor like your teacher had said, and then somebody said, yeah, that's great, but that's not a logical career choice, you need to go become a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer?
Oh yeah, my dad was very much wanted me to be a nurse. He thought I would have the best bedside manner, which I think is hilarious because I don't think I would at all. Because I'm way too straightforward with people. But my mom was very much try to do what you love, because she took a job that she did just to pay the bills, and she regrets it to this day. And so she didn't want me or my brother to end up like that, just going to work to pay the bills and not having a joyful work experience.
Tell me about the film school that you went to. Was it I've heard from people about people who go to theater school and film school for acting. You went for what? Was it a producer stream? What is it, a director stream? How does that work?
So I went to Capilano U. Well, it was college before it was university when I went. And they had a 3-year diploma program for film. And so each year we kind of you got more focused as you went. But it was open to people who wanted to be DOPs, people who wanted to be directors and producers and sound and post. So they really tried to create more well-rounded students, and they forced you to do other jobs. If I wanted to direct, well, I also had to be a grip on someone else's project, or do sound on another person's project, or write. So they really wanted you to learn everything so that you got an understanding of what it actually takes to make a movie. We had weekend courses where a professional first AD and a sound person and a camera person would come in, and you'd do a workshop, and you'd have to learn how a set works properly and how to manage that and what the right calls were. And, so they really took on-set experience to heart in that school, which I think a lot of film schools don't actually teach their students as much, which is kind of a shame. Like I find like a lot of schools working with students now, they focus a lot on directing and writing, but they don't necessarily focus on onset life or post life, or which is a little bit unfortunate, because as a PA, when you go to set for your first day ever, you're already like got a boatload of anxiety around you, and now you're kind of guessing like, well, what does that word mean, and what does this word mean, and what do I do here? And so I found like film school for me was able to do that, because we kind of were taught to create a real set experience on our sets while making films. So that helped a lot. That program has now changed, and it's now a bachelor program, so I'm not sure exactly what the aesthetic is like now, but for me when I was there, it was super helpful, because we had several different courses on different aspects of filmmaking. So we had like business class, we had post class, we had post sound, we had writing, we had directing, we had art department stuff, like grip and lighting. Like it really gave you the full kind of gamut of what the industry is like. And then it also had programs that worked together. So there was an acting program for TV and film. So we often cast those actors in our projects. So we got to like collaborate with actors who were trained in film and TV too. So it was great. And then we also had the wardrobe department. So we had costumers coming on our sets and doing the wardrobe, and we worked with the DOP students, and so it was really fun experience to kind of like work with other specialty programs all kind of together. Yeah. But I just remember like having no life. Like it was just like all film all the time. Like I lived there basically, even though I didn't live there on paper, it was like slept at the school, under tables, on couches, like at the computer, just like all the time there.
When you graduate, what happens? Like, do you is there like an internship that you do, or like how do you find work?
Yeah, I got fortunate enough that I was able to take an internship at a production company in Vancouver, and I learned a lot about the behind the scenes of producing, and the development work that goes into it, and the production work that goes into it. And I think if I hadn't gone to film school, I wouldn't have got that internship either, because there was a really good kind of relationship that the company had with the film school, and so like they were used to getting interns, and so I kind of put my name in the ring, and a couple other people did, and we all had to like interview and like that, that kind of thing. But I worked there for about a year and a half, 2 years, and just like tried to be a sponge and like soak up every information. I like would, talk. They had in-house legal counsel. They had an in-house line producer. They had an in-house finance team. They had an in-house development team at the time. So I just kind of like would, shadow and sit in and ask questions from everybody in those like departments, which was very helpful.
And what brought you back to the Soo? What brought you to the Soo?
My business partner brought me to the Soo. We shot a web series called My Roommate's an Escort, the second season here in the Soo, because Trish is from the Soo. And it worked out really well. And I think at that time too, I had been living in Toronto for a couple of years and was missing like nature and water and like, greenery. And you don't really find that a lot in Toronto. Unless you drive far.
Unless you drive to the Soo?
Yeah, or like, you'd have to like go to cottage country essentially, right? So whereas like, you forget how lucky you are on the West Coast one that's like literally right outside your door. And so, we shot up here, and yeah, and I really liked it, and I could see like the potential of the city, and there had been few films that shoot in the Sioux every year. So there was like some crew here, and there was a film school here, and there was a writing program at the university. And so there was some infrastructure that was like already laid in the city. And, they were actively looking to like grow the film industry. And so, we shot the project. We went home. We decided, let's open a company, and let's develop projects and, that we want to make. And, and because it's possible to do that in the Sioux, it's easier, it seemed like. And, and we had been developing projects and, working in Toronto doing that and balancing day jobs and everything. And then the pandemic happened. And then, and that was, it was a great push actually, because then we both moved to the Sioux. I ended up buying a house, and now we have a commercial building that we're out of now. And so like, it's actually a lot easier to get things done, I feel like, in the Sioux than it is Toronto. So that's been a big blessing. And we've been shooting things over COVID, and, and we opened a film festival. So it's been really nice to like be here and like see community growth like happen in a faster way than I think in Toronto would happen.
Why do you think that is? Why is it faster?
I think like there's not a lot of bureaucracy here, like, and B, like, costs are lower, and and it's a smaller community. So instead of the millions of people in Toronto, there's less than 100,000 people here. So it's a little bit easier to talk to your neighbors, or talk to people at the city, or talk to these grant people, or or go talk at the college. Like, there's not a lot of pushback, I guess, in that way that there is in like Toronto.
Yeah, I remember chatting with both Trish as well as two other producers they're based in Portland, but shot a movie in a tiny wee town in the States for that exact reason, because they could find community of people who wanted to help. And I know Trish was saying that, chatting with people within your community saying, hey, we'll have, I don't know, a type of car that we want for this movie. Want it to be in a movie? And people are so much more interested because it's more rare, right? It's not like Toronto where it's like, oh yeah, you're filming again on the street. What a nuisance. Where this is probably exciting.
Yeah. And I think also like in Toronto, it's become such a money-making machine now that like, for indie filmmakers, it's a lot harder, right? Because if you want to film at a park, you need insurance, and you need a permit, and you need this, and it costs you a lot more than, let's say, a smaller town does. Where if you shoot in a smaller town, you're probably going to be able to talk to the city about the permit, and you're going to be able to get help like with what you need at the park, and the costs are going to be a lot lower. And so it does help. I mean, there's pros and cons, like from the big city to the small city, right? Like, we don't have the same number of crew here that they do in Toronto, right? Like, if someone is sick one day, it's a lot harder for us to replace them than it is in Toronto. But you kind of have to outweigh those things, and also think about, I guess, what your long-term goals are when like going to the smaller city.
So you established 180 Sisterhood in the Sioux, a production company. Take me through like a typical day in the life of a producer.
Gosh, I feel like that depends on where you're at on a project. Because I mean, typically, we come into the office and we're working on grant projects and developing projects and writing projects and figuring out all that. And then once a project is greenlit, then that changes everything, right? Then you're into pre-production, and you're assembling a team, and you're casting, and you're location scouting, and you're figuring out what decade your project is set in, and are there visual effects, and what's your post plan and who you're delivering to, when's your deadline, and so it kind of like ramps up really fast for a period of time, and then post happens, and then that's a whole different type of world too, where you know if you're the producer, then you're waiting for the editor's cut, then the director's cut, then it's your turn, and you get to view your cut, and then meanwhile you're sending it off to the distributor or broadcaster or platform to get their opinion and notes, and you're incorporating those notes or not. I mean, it really depends on the relationship and what kind of notes they are, I guess, in terms of that from the distributor. And then you're delivering. So, and then you repeat the whole cycle again. or you're doing, or it depends, you could be doing a series. So then you're doing that, but times 13 episodes or 10 episodes or 52 episodes. And, then those schedules are on a shorter, I guess. And like your weeks are then drastically changing, and you're not getting sleep, and, because on series, you're maybe delivering one episode that week, but also shooting an episode, but writing an episode in the same week. And, it's all those ones, those ones are a lot more stressful for sure.
So it's interesting because most of the people who listen to this show are actors, but most of those actors are people who didn't go to theater school, right? They're coming at this from a completely different career path and are now attempting to be actors. And so I'll use myself as an example, not knowing what a producer does at all until chatting with yourself and with Trish and learning kind of the behind the scenes. So tell me your experience, and I don't mean this in like a negative way. Tell me about actors. Like, how do they fit into this massive project? Because I know actors, guilty, tend to think of like, we're the most important thing. But there's so much going on, as you just explained. So tell me about how actors can fit. How do they fit into all of this?
Well, I mean, there are a few kind of segments, I guess you could say, how actors fit, right? So once the script is written and once you've got your creative team, then you go into the casting position, which is like what most actors think is like the main starting point. Which it is, but sometimes, you have people on your creative team who have already precast in their head people, right? So sometimes you go and you offer people roles, but, these are usually the more A-list, B-list celebrities. And then you get into the main casting process, and that, that can take weeks, months. It depends on how much time you have and your money and your schedule and, how organized you are. And you end up casting everybody, from the one bit part line to the person who might be driving a car to the stunt person to the lead actor. All of that gets cast. There's, usually doing background, there's usually a background coordinator who will actually, depending on the level of the feature, you'll get selects. So the director, may want certain type of background. So the background coordinator's job is to go and find those people, bring them to the director for selections, and then they'll hire people. And they might even call those people in. You don't know. Like, it really depends on the length and the vision of the project. Like, I remember being a background coordinator on a project, and the director was very picky about who they wanted in what scene and what they needed to look like and what they couldn't be. And so we went back and forth a lot, actually, just on people's pictures, trying to like cast, and then availability is the other thing, right? So, which is always the ever changing thing in the industry. So then everyone's cast, actors do their thing on set, and then then you start editing. But then let's say the sound wasn't good that day, and you need to go back into post, and you need to bring the actor in, and they got to do ADR. So now, some actors, they get to come into post houses and record audio and match literally their lips to nicer audio. And then that happens, and then, you finish the movie, and maybe through all of that too, you've got a marketing team who's putting together posters and social media and press kits and all of that stuff, and then you have the premiere. So usually some of those actors come to the premiere or festivals, and it really depends on that. So the actors can have a long time frame, and some actors even come in during like pre-production and do some writing with the director, or they rehearse scenes, or there's like, let's say, for example, like Wednesday right now, that actor, she had to learn how to play the cello. She had to learn how to fence. Like, that's all pre-production stuff that you now have to think about and train. And, that's not just, and production, like, we'll set up time for that, and we'll make sure that happens, and, and puts aside time so that she does her scenes, and then she goes and practices the cello for 2 hours. So it's a lot of parts actually that get like scheduled and planned by other people. But that's basically everything in the industry.
So casting is something that we are always asking about, right? Because I mean, it's literally the crux of what we do as actors, right? It's our job. From your experience as both a producer and a director, what have you seen from the casting side of things that can help, newer actors, and anything that's kind of can make an actor stand out to you from the casting side of things in both your hats as a producer and a director?
I mean, it's really about showing up, right? And putting the work in every audition, because we may not cast you this role. We may not cast you next role. But in the mind, if you are a standout person and you have a personality and you're a kind person, and and you show up and you do the work, we're going to remember that down the road. And down the road, we might have a part that's perfect for you, or we might write a part that's perfect for you, and then we cast you, right? Like on Armchair, my two leads, I didn't even really audition them. I knew that I wanted them based on a short film I saw and meeting them in person at a film festival and seeing their chemistry together. So like that can happen. It's not always the case, but it's also part of the job, right? It's like going to those functions, even if you don't want to, meeting the people, meeting new people, and then always practicing the muscle, right? Like a writer should be writing all the time if that's what they want to pursue. A director should be directing all the time if that's what they want to do. An actor should be acting all the time, even if it's just sketches or theater or something, or even just in your home. You've got to be practicing the muscle, right? That's, I think, what people forget. They think, oh, it's just easy, you just show up and do. It's like, no, you got to practice it. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort. Like, we look at people like Morgan Freeman and Helen Mirren and stuff. Like, they're pros, yes, but they also took time to perfect their craft, and they're still perfecting their craft, and they will probably never say that they're done, because you can't ever really be done, which is kind of hard to say, but it's true. And you just got to keep pushing, because the weird thing too about this industry is trends change very fast and quite often. And so, today's trend could be blonde girls, tomorrow it could be brunettes, then it could be redheads. Like we have this weird cyclical thing where we're always changing what we're looking for, or what's new, it's the same in fashion, right? Like now we're in 90s fashion, but maybe like 3 years ago we were in like 70s or 60s, right? Like it always changes. So that's another thing to think about. It's like, yes, maybe you're not booking as much now, but maybe in the next 2 years you might be, or, and that's the scary part, I think, about acting.
It's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot, about the motto of Survivor, the television show. I don't think, and how it relates to acting, like, I don't think I need to outwit or outplay people. I just need to outlast them. Because I think if you can just, like, honestly, yeah, of course you have to keep training. Yeah. But if you can just outlast people and just be like, still here, hi, and casting goes, oh my God, she's still here? Cool. Right? I honestly think that's what it is. Like, if you're still enjoying it, just stick it out.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part about the industry, is sticking it out. Because there's so many times in everyone's career where, you are jobless for a while and you don't know what's next because you can't predict the future. It gets scary, and we've all kind of been there. But you just have to stick it out, because eventually the things that you love doing are going to happen. And they may be on smaller shows, they may be on bigger shows, but it doesn't matter, because if you actually do like the craft, you're still going to enjoy the work you do, big or small.
I think that's so key. Do you have any advice for anyone who's kind of in that, well, we're all kind of in that lull period, right? Like, this is the lull period in Eastern Canada for filming. Do you have any advice for not just actors, but for, producers, directors, the gig economy?
I don't like using the word hustle, but I think the main thing is just continuing to make content. It's so much easier these days. Cell phones have evolved so much. Digital cameras have evolved so much that it really doesn't take a lot to invest in making content and putting it out there now. Like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Twitch, and like all these things are easy to, put your content out there. You just need maybe a couple friends in your community, and you can make a whole bunch of things, and again, it's about practicing the muscle, right? Like, we're planning to make some short films right before the Christmas break. And that's A, because we have downtime, and B, because we all want to keep practicing the muscle. And then we'll have some content to put out next year, right? So it's really about that. And the industry relies a lot on social media to keep up to date with who's doing what. And so that's another thing to think about is, I did a sketch. Well, did you film it? No. Well, next time, film it and maybe put it online. Do a story of it, or a TikTok or a reel. And people will start to see, like, oh, she's busy. They're doing things. People, unfortunately, in this industry, when you seem busy, that's when people want to hire you.
Is there anything that actors can do to make your job easier?
Well, I think coming in with ideas is always the fun part, right? Like, this is such a collaborative industry that my idea of a character versus your idea of a character might be completely different. And then we come up and we meld them together and we make a new character. Or, or just letting go sometimes, I think, as an actor is another way, right? Sometimes I've worked with folks who are so kind of blinded in a way that they only see their character like this, but they don't realize that there's like this much to their character. So that's always something, like, I think you got to be open about. Same as directors, like, and writers, and DOPs, like, we all have to be a bit more, I think, open to ideas and suggestions. I mean, obviously, on the day it's a lot harder because we have the time crunching down on us. But in pre-production, I think that's when we can kind of, have these kind of conversations, or, and don't be afraid to, like, if you're a lead or a second lead, don't be afraid to reach out in prep, right? Like, I find that sometimes people are afraid. They're like, I don't want to bug you. You're so busy. It's like, yes, but, if you have questions about your character or backstory, or, how they dress and all those things, like, that's important to know now and talk about now in pre-production than on the day.
That's really great advice, because I think, again, we have this weird fear, and I say we as like a global we, right? Like not just actors, but reaching out to people and asking questions, because I don't know if there's a fear of, maybe it's imposter syndrome, right? There's a fear of being like found out. Like if I ask this question, they're going to be like, wow, she's stupid. I didn't realize that before, which is false, right? It comes from nothing except for our ridiculous brains. But I think it's a huge deal, because when those questions get asked, the project has to improve, because now you've worked together and developed something.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes, it's a question that then you're going to go back later as a director or a writer, and look at and think, does this make sense? Or should I change this? And if I change this, will this happen? And then it kind of just spirals, and mostly in a good way, right? Because yeah. And I think that's what people forget, is that this is a very collaborative industry, and oftentimes we forget that.
And I think it's also because like we all have blinders on, right? Because we are like so busy, and there's so many things that need to get done. And like you were saying, a time crunch is huge in a project like that, like you work on. So it's stressful. So people forget that they can kind of take a step back.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, where I talked about practicing your craft, like those are the times when you can also try new things, right? That's the best time to try new things. Like, oh, I want to learn I really like this shot. How did they make that shot? Well, can I recreate it in a different project? Do I have time to learn how to do that? Or you're like, oh, I really liked how that person, move their hands in this scene, or like, how can I do that? So then like write a character like that and figure out how to do that. And so those practice moments are kind of your time to try new things, which I don't think we give ourselves enough time to do that either, because we are so busy and we get into the repetitive, mundane side of the work, that we forget that we should be playing too, and practicing new things. And I will say, like, actors are lucky in a way, because you guys have classes that you can sign up to and go to, whereas like we don't really on the behind the scenes side, we don't really have classes in that kind of way where you get to play and work with other people. Our classes are usually like, let's make a short film. Those are our kind of version of a class. Whereas, or it's like, as a producer, you're like, oh, I need to do a class on accounting. Those are not the same. This is the same kind of thing, right? So I will say actors are lucky in that way, where they can sign up for classes and try something new, or like, sketch classes I think are always good, because I think people forget that comedy is harder than drama, and horror is harder than drama too. So it's those are always the classes I see a lot of actors taking, which I think in later helps with performance, right?
Do you have anything you are looking forward to coming up?
Yeah, I'm dabbling into animation direction, and creating some animated projects, and some projects with puppets and stuff. And that's what I'm really excited about next year, is that, we're going to be able to develop some more projects like that and have some fun, like, and do like creative stuff within the team here, and be more like our own thing. So like, service work is great, but it's not your own thing. So I think that's mostly what I want to try and focus on next year too, is just developing our own stuff in-house.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And my next question was kind of more, tell me if you can, I don't know if there's anything under wraps about what's going on up in the Sioux with the film industry in the North, and with 180. Like, what have you guys been up to?
I mean, the Northern industry is getting quite big. I think they just announced a new studio in Sudbury, which is pretty cool. And I think that'll hopefully bring in some more projects up north. With 180, we've got our shorts, and we have a couple projects that we're trying to get off the ground that are more of our own projects. One that Trish Crow wrote, which is a drama, coming of age drama, which is it's a really beautiful story, and definitely we all kind of are close to in our own ways, just with dealing with grief. So I'm really hoping that we can try and get that project funded next year. Yeah, and then other than that, we've just been moving into our space and and organizing the space, and we're in post on Armchair, so that'll be still happening next year.
You had mentioned your mom and dad earlier on. How would your, not just mom and dad, but your loved ones, friend circle, how do they describe what you do for a living?
Oh man, I don't even know. Well, a lot of my friend circle are film people, so I feel like they could easily describe that. But for non-film people, I don't know. I don't know how my mom would describe that. I guess just a general entrepreneur, probably, because I'm often, that's like the biggest thing you do as a producer, is you're always creating new businesses and new business plans, and for every project, basically.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
I mean, something, that was kind of told to me when I was younger as a filmmaker was that if you don't practice, you can't be better. And so that is, I've always kind of taken that to heart. And as well, I've always tried to learn other people's jobs in the industry. So I think that's something that also everyone should do at least once. You should, be a PA. You should work in the camera team. You should work in the grip team, the lighting team, the sound team, wardrobe, visual effects, post-production, acting. You should try all of the departments at least once. It doesn't have to be on a big show. It can be on a small show. But knowing how each department works is going to change how you work too. And it's going to give you a different perspective on how and what everybody needs. I think that's the one thing that I did early on in my career that I'm very thankful that I did, because as a producer, it's allowed me to understand the nitty-gritty of departments, also the what can be done with less, and also what's often bullshitted to a producer, So, I it's, but I think everybody in the industry should play in each other's playgrounds, because it'll give everybody a different perspective, and it'll, I think, also help people stop treating other departments poorly, because there's a lot of that happens too, right? And I think if they see how much work goes into that department versus their department, and yes, grips and electrics, they carry heavy equipment, but which is tough, and it's stressful and hurts your body. But then you also have the other side of it, where you have other departments who are literally making sure that the numbers match and that they don't mess up someone's payroll, or that they have to put a wig on someone, and then they have to go to processing, and all of that they have to do in a certain amount of time, and that's also stressful. So I think people forget this amount of stress that every department is on, not just theirs.
I have one more question. Do you have a favorite moment on set, or favorite moment in your career so far?
I don't actually think of them as favorites per se. I don't know. There's stories for sure, but I don't think I have a favorite yet. I will say this, that when we were shooting Armchair, I am actually acting in it. And my scene was scheduled during the last week. And we had great weather the whole shoot, and we were shooting in the summer. And of course, the one day we're supposed to be shooting my scene, which is also near the end of the movie, it rains, pouring rain, torrential rain. And, and at that point, I don't know if I'm going to have time in the schedule to reshoot or whatever. So we all like sucked it up and shot the scene in the rain. And I was like so upset. I was like, this is not how I envisioned the scene. Like, I might have to now go and rewrite some shit. Like, just like a whole bunch of stuff. But we did it, and like, and then the last day was our like big party scene, and I was talking to the DP, and we have both seen the dailies for that rain day, and we both were like, it's not so good. Like, and so we figured out a way to shoot the party scene in like way less time so that we could reshoot the ending the way we both wanted to shoot it. So that was pretty lucky. So we lucked out that way. So yeah, but I mean, it probably still would have worked out fine. It would have been a different kind of ending in the rain, but I'm happy we were able to like figure it out and reshoot it.
The whole like you have to be so flexible, hey? Like just it's like relinquish control because you have literally no control over the weather. You can't do anything about it.
We can't. And like, bless the G&E team, they like put up this giant silk and and they're trying to like cover us from the rain a little bit, but it's like all the way around it's like wet, and like the scene is actually supposed to be shot not in the rain, and so we're trying our best, and but we so now we have two versions of that scene. But the non-rain scene is way better, in my opinion. And it was also kind of great in a way, because then I got to do a second take, right? Like, I was so nervous acting in that scene because I haven't like properly done that in ages. And so by the time we did it in the rain, I'm like, okay, we got it over with. I'm like, I have no idea what I look like. Just like, and then watch the dailies, and I'm like, okay. And then we got to do it again. And I think, my acting for sure got better because I wasn't as stressed anymore as well. Right. So like, it was just like, I got like a second chance at doing that scene again, which was really nice.
Can I ask, how do you direct yourself?
I honestly was lucky, and I had a DOP who we've been working together for a while, and we know each other outside of work a little bit. So it was really much a like, in my head, who's this character? And I just tried to like, take all of those like small acting class moments that I know, and just like be in the moment and like be with my acting partner. And then we would do a take, and then I would ask the DP, how was it? So I was more relying on the DP's eyes and then the feeling to like get that scene done.
Like somebody directing themselves, I had this weird like vision in my head of like, you do your acting thing and then you kind of like yell cut to yourself, and then you like run and look at the monitor and watch it back. Was that what you would do, or was it more the trust that you had in your DOP?
So we were also under a time crunch. We were shooting that scene at golden hour, so we only had like an hour-ish to shoot it. So I didn't have time to watch playback. Usually you'd act, yell cut, then you'd go to the monitor, you'd watch playback, then you'd like fix and go. But we didn't have time for playback. So I just trusted the DP and the scripting. That was it. And I just trusted the gut of the scene, really.
That's really great. I think, the biggest thing I find everyone I've talked to, especially people like yourself who are kind of the industry guests that I chat with, the common vein throughout everything is finding the community of people that you can trust. And do you have, just again, I keep saying this is my last question. This will be my last question. Do you have any advice, or like, how do you find that community? How do you build that community, especially when you come from a non-theater school background, so you don't have a community already?
But you do have a community. Every class you take with somebody, every project you work on, that's you building your community. Every networking event you go to, that's building a community. All of those things add up to your community, right? Like, for example, in our office situation, Trish and I met through a friend. You know, that was through the community. Parth and Joseph, we met through Sioux College, and, you know, we bonded, and now, you know, we have this working relationship. So it all ends up coming around. Like, every job you have, you slowly build your community through those jobs. Every networking event, same thing. And that's why I say, like, when you go and you practice and you play on these smaller projects, that's when you get to see, is that person fitting in with my aesthetic? Do we work well? Do we want to continue to work well together? Or, no, we didn't really gel, so I like them, but they're not, like, in my core group, you know? Like, we met you on A Christmas Letter. You know, that was like, you were there for one day.
And then I stalked you. I was like, I like them so much.
No, but like, you were in for one day, and when you wrapped, you came, you found us, you did your thing, and you chatted with us, right? Like, not everybody does that. We had actors on that show that came for their one day and then they left. They didn't say hi, bye to us, really. We were producing, you know, but you came, you said hi, bye, you know, and you kept in touch after that, right? Like, that's the difference. Right? It's the same thing. You got to put work into the relationship, just like work into your career. It goes, and that's just like everybody. It goes both ways, right? So, but yeah, every networking event, every job, every audition, every theater performance, every podcast, like, yeah, all of those people end up could be in your network, in your community. And then it's just a matter of, like, you know, figuring out who are the good ones and who are not the good ones, you know, which takes time, right? Like, you know, some people can long con you, and some people, you know, right away, like, I can't trust that person. You know, you just know in your gut, right?
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Rebeka, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much. Thank you does not seem like a big enough word. Thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your story, and most of all, being such an advocate for the Northern Ontario film community, Northern Ontario actors, and just, you know, beginning actors, second act actors in general. You are an absolute freaking queen and powerhouse, and I'm so privileged and honored to know you. I'm getting emotional again. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I hope you will join me next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye! Second Act Actors is produced and edited by me, Janet McMorty. Theme music by Guillaume. Additional sound editing by David Studio. Additional video editing by Jackie Wadoer. Show notes written by Sarah Hopkinson. I record using Riverside FM. If you're interested in developing an interview-based webcast like mine, I highly recommend this platform. Shoot me an email and I'll direct you to the wonderful folks there. If you or someone you know is interested in being a guest, email me at secondactactors@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. My love language is words of affirmation, so compliments, constructive criticism, and feedback are always welcome and encouraged. Negative Nancys, Judgy McJudgersons, or Debbie Downers, unless you're Rachel Dratch, regarding me or my guests are not welcome. It takes serious courage to share your story with the world, so if you're tempted to negatively comment about someone else's story, please ask your therapist why you're such a garbage person. Save the drama for the stage. On that happy note, I hope you'll tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye!